for someone. We can't really do anything with for people who aren't members. So it's really something that we try to but people can still come to us with their issues, and we'll do our best to do a formal investigation and sort of articulate the role that the guild can play, if there is a role that the guild can play. So in a way, the resolutions committee is simply a way for people to air their grievances and see if there is a formal way that the guild can help resolve their concerns or their issues. But in a lot of ways, there's not a lot of things that we can do for a lot of the things that come to us. But I think it's important that people recognize that they can come to us with those issues.
Mm-hmm. I am sorry that I forgot to hit recording at the very top of that. 2, I think, Cole, the coolest thing, I think the NCR and Fuck Shit Up are actually 2 things that I wish more associations I worked with had. So that, one, like, no association is any organization's HR department. They are not the police. You are not the cops, staff, board, chapter leadership. Like, that's not the role. And to have a venue where things can be talked about internally and worked out is just incredible. And then the Fuck Shit Up committee thing, what I think is so important is it's on a similar vein. It's actually internally making sure that as things are happening, members at large have a voice outside of all the context and conversations that led to the thing, right? So then part of punching holes in it or asking questions or whatever is free reign in game to check any positive or negative, conscious or unconscious bias that may be happening that came out of these hard conversations that have led to policies or procedures or programming plans or something. So these 2 things are like my favorite things. So I thought you did a great job of wrapping all of that up. That's wonderful. And we didn't get to see your hat, Cole. So, wow, Aaron, I don't know.
That was a metaphor.
Oh, it was a metaphor. I got very excited. I imagine you have great hat gear.
I have a lot of fun socks, but I rarely just wear a basic black Washington Nationals ball cap if I ever wear a hat.
All right. I'm disappointed by that truth, but okay. Speaking of hats, Aaron, Madam Executive Director, do you have any thoughts or comments or anything since you are on a Fuck Shit Up call before we turn it over to Ingrid and the topic for the day?
No, I just more than anything, I just wanted to ask, thank you all for joining 2 meetings so far, and then making being here for this 3rd one. Really love the work that this group has done over the last couple of years, and hope to continue supporting it. So thank you for all you've done and everything you will do. And I'll pass it over to Ingrid so we can hear from the chair of the National Resolutions Committee, because they are doing important work too.
Yeah, absolutely.
My turn now?
Go for it, Ingrid. Thank you very much.
Okay. So as you guys have heard, I'm the chair of the National Resolutions Committee. I've been the chair for 7 years, 6 years, something like that. But part of the reason why they had me become the chair was that not only I as a chapter leader and as a chapter member have gone through many iterations of the NRC. Back when I was just the treasurer of the USBG in Tampa, our chapter had gone through the pre-resolution process, even way back, because we were having internal chapter conflicts. And then personally, I had my own resolution due to a personal conflict with a member body. And having gone through the process, it made it a little bit easier for me to understand what the needs are and how to get them, and also how important privacy is within this group. Of course, most of you guys remember we had a big blow up in 2018, and part of that made it clear that we needed to be a lot more transparent with what we were doing, but also provide more support and more assets to our members to be able to have that happen. Our committee is intentionally small. It is also intentionally picked by people who we feel can round out and actually absorb this information in its best form. There are some of you that are on this call that I know that have already gone through the resolution committee, so I'm sure they will have some input as into what we do and how we do it. One of the things that has changed over the time that I've been the chair is that it has moved significantly from interpersonal relationships between members and more into how can we help and assist chapters in making sure that they have the tools and the leadership ability to answer some of these questions internally without having to go through the national process. We do sit on calls a lot of times with different chapters to go over code of conduct, go over conflict resolution, go over, what's the other word I'm looking for? The compete agreements. Like there's a lot of stuff that's happening that we want to make sure that everyone's on the up and up, and that it doesn't look like there's any favoritism that's going on anywhere along. Resolutions stay open until they come to an actual close or we receive no response over a certain amount of time. When you read our reports, they're very vague, but they're vague intentionally. We want to make sure that everybody who's involved in a resolution, whether they're from complainant to recipient, or make that privacy is concerned until it has to be escalated. And we always ask for permission. One of the best things that comes out of the resolution committee is that it's very clear on the end of the people that it needs to be clear to. We do not respond to Facebook. We do not respond to outside media sources. Everything that we do is internal, is specifically to maintain the safety of the parties that are involved. So with that, do you guys have any questions about the NRC or anything that you have that you're not aware of, or anything that you would like us to answer? Cole being on the call is also helpful because he's part of the committee as well.
Basically, sorry, hi, for those who don't know me, I'm Paula, I'm from the New York chapter. If there was an issue, again, we should bring it to you or try to resolve ourselves within the chapter first.
It really depends. If you feel like you have the tools, that it's something that you can resolve, then definitely try to internally resolve it as much as possible. If you feel like you need guidance, then it's something that you can, don't be afraid to pop up anything to us, because sometimes it's as easy as directing you to where you need to go, or kind of giving you the, like a lot of the time, some of the chapters, it's just kind of like, hey, you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing, follow that. If you would like us to stay in CC and see what's going on, then definitely bring it to us. At no point in time should either an individual or a chapter ever feel like something cannot pass through the NRC, but at the same time, we want to empower you guys to have the leadership skills to do that.
Okay, thank you.
And if people do reach out to you, is it via the website, I'm assuming? Or how, like,
there's an email address that's probably the best way to reach out. It's just resolutions@usbg.org. I would say that's
Okay.
probably the first line.
There's actually multiple ways of reaching out. In all fairness, we leave it as very flexible as possible. The online form would be the easiest, or sending us an email. However, there have been times where they've just notified one of the committee members or they've notified management. So as long as someone notifies someone and then we get it to the resolution committee, we're able to open that up. So even though there's a formal process, we wanted to maintain flexibility to make it as easy and as fast as we can for people that may be in a state of crisis or emergency.
right? I just, I don't know how many chapters really talk about that. That's why I'm asking, because I feel like we could all do better in our local chapters to make it known. Hey, you know, whether we know if there's a problem or not, I'm not assuming there are any problems at any time, but it's just like, hey, if you've got anything. So what you're saying, it's not just, I've got a problem with what's his name doing stuff I don't like to me, you know, harassing me or whatever, but you're saying within the chapters itself.
So what we do is it can be member to member,
Right.
but it can also be just chapters confused about something that's happening within their membership. It could be chapters that need a little bit more guidance on direct board of directors and the responsibilities of those people. Could be something like someone's embezzling. Like, I find it comical that you're like, I assume nobody's doing anything. Our committee assumes everyone is doing everything. So we try to work from the point of view of everything that we put into place is more or less setting a precedence for how we're going to solve things in the future. So internally, if a chapter has an issue, a chapter can come to us. We then give the chapter the tools to handle that same issue within their own community without having to go to us a second time. A lot of what we're doing is setting up everyone for success so that there's a clear guideline and a very, very clear point, point of command as it goes up. But in general, the whole point of this is to really get chapters to handle stuff internally without it getting bounced up to the NRC. Now that's chapter to chapter. Individual to individual is a completely different story. So we've gotten complaints from USBG members, from non-USBG members. Like, for the most part, the initial process can legitimately be anybody. We've had anonymous complaints as well, but The only issue that we have is that sometimes, like Cole said, they're looking to us to be some sort of a policing agent, or they're looking for us to kind of ruin somebody's life or kick them out of something that matters to them. And unfortunately, that is not our purview. Like, we are not a policing agent. We only have the ability to do stuff within the context of being a USPG member at a USPG event. So if there is a non-USPG member and it's about a USPG member, then there is some connection. If it's happening at a USPG event, then there is some connection. But what winds up happening a lot of times is people don't necessarily know who's a USPG member. They may assume they're a USPG member. And sometimes the resolutions may not come out the way that people expect, only because that doesn't fit within anything that we can actually control. We're working on creating better guidelines. One of the things that we have emphasized for chapters to do, and something that we should do on a larger scale, is at the beginning of every business meeting, or at least once a year, to go over exactly what the code of conduct is, and to actually understand with the entire chapter membership, hey, you guys have agreed to sign on another year to the USPG. Here's your code of conduct. Here's our sexual harassment policy. Here is the information for the NRC if you feel like anyone in our spaces is violating either one of these. And then we can, that way everyone is very, very clear on what the expectations of them as a member are. However, right now that's only happening internally within the resolutions committee when we're talking to chapters, but it should be something that's implemented on a larger scale across all the chapters. Was that too much, Joe?
No, but also you should know that I assume that nobody's doing anything wrong because Libra and Heart. So it's like both of those.
Yeah. I'm Libra, not Heart.
Yeah.
To echo something that that Ingrid said earlier, I think while if you feel like you have the tools, if you feel like you have the resources, if you feel like you have the bandwidth to handle something that is elevated to chapter leadership, we want you to feel like you can do that locally. But if you're ever in any doubt about whether or not you're taking the right path, if you want some sample language to use, if there's any way that we can support you, you can elevate that to the resolutions committee, and not seeking a formal resolution or an intervention. Just be like, we would like some guidance from the official national body that helps navigate these issues. So it doesn't have to be like, we want you to handle it internally, but if there's any question about whether or not you're passing legal muster, if there are questions about how it might affect it, insurance and liability issues, there are a lot of ways that chapters can do this wrong. So if any doubt whatsoever about whether or not you're taking the right path, feel free to just reach out informally to any of the members of the resolutions committee. We can talk about it internally and give you some guidance on how to navigate that, because these waters can be very choppy, and there's a lot of rocks that you might see right below the surface there, and a lot of chapters have gotten themselves into some trouble by attempting to navigate these issues and not having the language to do it, and not necessarily having the resources to do it. So if you think you got it, great, we trust you. If you have any questions, any doubts whatsoever, do not hesitate to reach out. It does not need to be elevated to a formal resolutions process, start to finish, fully, according to Hoyle situation. We can just talk through it with you.
We also don't want to be seen anymore as just the agent of ending. Like, people treated the NRC for a really long time like it was going to the principal's office, or like you were getting in trouble. In all fairness, a lot of it is just trying to navigate and mitigate communication styles, or trying to figure out what the actual rules are. A lot of what we do is, for lack of a better term, it's very clear. It's black and white. There's very little room for guidance, but you may not know what those steps would be. And we want to encourage people to come to us with their issues so that we can help navigate where it goes. The best part about this, Jarrett is our board, as our management liaison. Jarrett is well trained in the relationships that need to be had here. She has sexual harassment training. Actually, the entire committee is going through that RAIN training that we had so that we can do some intervention. She's also just great to deal with. I have never seen a woman that's more empathetic towards every need. Like if she misses a deadline, she actually gets really physically hurt. I don't. I'm probably the least person on the team, but she's very well aware of the steps that need to be taken. And we as a group have done an incredible job of getting also lots of outside sources So whether that be sexual harassment or workplace harassment or anything like that, we can provide sources really quickly within market for people to access and utilize. And she sends that within her first correspondence. Oh, good. I like silence. Come on, guys. Supposed to be fuck shit up.
You know, now at the beginning of the meeting, and then I'm introduced, and you know, we talk about the fuck shit up committee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because of the past issues with the chapter, you know, a lot of people were hesitant even to rejoin. So we just said, you know, please reach out to any of us. It doesn't have to obviously be in public, you know, DM us, email, text, call, whatever you want. But we're just trying to, you know, let people know that, you know, it's an open door and things will not be tolerated, you know, the way they were. And just don't hesitate to, if you think even something's not important, don't, you know, it's probably important, or it might not be important, but just, you know, don't hesitate to reach out, and they'll, you know, we want to be transparent, and, you know, we're not going to go, oh, so-and-so reached out and so-and-so said, you know, we respect privacy and everything of that sort. So we're always like making that clear before each meeting now.
So hearsay is also very difficult for us a lot of the times, because we've gotten some complaints that it was like this person said that this person did this to this person.
Right.
We will address it and we will contact the person that submitted it. But at the same time, unless it's really a first person, we can't do anything. Unfortunately, sometimes we've had some things come in under our purview, and we've had nobody that wanted to make a statement, nobody that wanted to like back up or be a witness. And unfortunately, when that happens, it's too difficult for us to just say we agree with this or disagree with this. Like, we still have to maintain some sort of neutrality.
Right.
And going back to what we're saying, we're not a policing agent. So if there's something that needs to go up to the police, we have had a case where, and I'm not going to disclose any information, where we did realize that this was a police matter. The complainant had asked for the police to intervene. And once they did that, we said, we're going to take a step back until the police do their end of it. And when it gets to that resolution, then we can input on top of that. Only because we wanted to make sure to not like create any gray area in a legal matter that was outside of the USVG. So we are aware of the different levels that we have. The best thing about it too is that we're super available. If something comes to us and we feel like it's something that needs to be addressed rapidly, we do have a text thread and we do maintain privacy, and we're able to say, okay, we need to get on a call tomorrow. We have to address this immediately. We have less than 24 or 48 hours. This is new from where we were. It's something that we learned, that there are things that if we don't address them quickly, or if someone is in an emergency situation, whether that be to themselves or to other people, it's important that we quickly get in line with it. Sometimes you'll see we have advised chapters that they have to close some meetings. We have advised either which way, when it gets to the point that something is fast, our committee is able to handle that very quickly.
Okay. Great. I think we captured all that, but just so you know, your service went in and out briefly.
Yeah, it just popped up unstable for some reason.
Yeah, no worries. Mo, were you going to say something?
Me.
Yeah, I have a question. Hi everybody. I did have a question as far as like getting legal involved. Like, say for instance, if there were an incident where legal was involved and they just decided to either dismiss the case, but that doesn't necessarily say that nothing happened. How are we protecting women in that particular situation and making sure that they're safe? Because I've heard numerous of issues where the guys are normally protected and the women aren't.
It would really be on a case-by-case basis. Our findings are different from legal findings. We just don't interfere with legal findings. And this case wasn't a sexual harassment case. In our case, if it's happening within the context of a USBG meeting or a USBG space within USBG members, then we do have the ability to roll that up to the line to look at if that person will be welcome within the USBG space. One of the biggest issues that occurs within chapters is that our meetings are open meetings. We're constantly saying this meeting is open to all members of the hospitality community. You know, we will, if you're not a member, please come, because that is a potential member. That is a possible new member. So if it's someone in the community that is, if it's a USBG member, we can actually revoke that membership. It takes a lot. It has to go up to the board, but that is the ultimate the ultimate aspect that we can do. However, it's someone who's not in the community, we would go back and we would advise the chapter, hey, you may want to close your meetings for just USBG members based on some allegations that are existing. We're not trying to say that that person is guilty or not guilty, because we obviously can't do that. But we are saying, for the safety of our members who are current members, this is what we can do for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we do take those allegations very, very strongly. Most of you, without giving too much information, you know that my background comes from that. So I definitely pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, you look so serious right now.
No, I'm listening, and listening is part of what I try to do well. Partially because the reason I'm on this committee is because we had issues that couldn't get resolved on a local level. And I'm thinking this is a very much like the way an HR department works, and then HR department's job is to protect the company. And this is to protect the USBG first and foremost. Ultimately, this is to make sure that the USBG and its members are safe, and it does not act as a policing agent. It can't.
One of the things that comes up a lot in board conversations, etc., that I think is important is that a lot of the different initiatives often get compared to an HR department. And so I just want to throw out, because I'm the annoying consultant outsider person, that an HR department would only be for the paid staff of USBG, right? So like, if wherever it is you work, you may have an HR department, you may not have an HR department, and that is related to employment, getting paid to be somewhere and covered by all kinds of laws and regulations and policies and OSHA and things like that. That's HR. But an association is a membership organization that people pay money based on the criteria that it can be as specific as you like it to be. And honestly, if we want to get into the Constitution, which nobody ever does with me, but the more specific you are, the better you actually protect your freedom of assembly as an association. So then people have to go, they have to pay dues, they got to do this, they got to do this, they got a code of ethics, they got a code of conduct, they got all this stuff that they got to do in order to become a member. But then it doesn't have like the legal protections. It has more like cultural protections of what is tolerated and not tolerated within an association. That's on a national level. Then some associations have local organizations like chapters or regional committees or something like that. And then on a regional committee, there's definitely not an HR department, a legal ramification, legal protections, but the cultural protections of what is tolerated and not tolerated usually generates more conversations. So part of what I love about the NCR is that those conversations get to occur inside of the association without it actually becoming a role that the association should not actually be playing. So like Mo, to your question, I don't think anybody wants to like jeopardize or put anybody in danger, but an association also does not have legal recourse to mandate who can go to public spaces, who can attend public events. So you can't like, there's no legal authority to say like, no, you're an asshole, you can't come here. But there is a cultural authority of you're an asshole, get the fuck out of here. But you can't legally mandate that or something. But
okay.
We'll make
just to provide.
Oh, go ahead, Minnie.
I was gonna say,
I'll finish.
Just to provide some context, a few people have reached out to me as far as when you're talking about getting people to join the USBG, sexual assault has came up. And there has been issues where apparently like the guy is protected, either he gets a position in USBG on a local level and the female is kind of like ostracized. And there is, that's something, if we're trying to get more women involved, and people of color, this is concerning to me. If I'm trying to bring people in and they're saying they're aware of the history and they're bringing something to me that I wasn't privy to, it's kind of scary.
Well, we may not be privy to that information either, though. So here lies the problem. there's a lot of stuff that happens culturally within chapters that isn't actually brought to the NRC. It's kind of going under the table. They all talk to each other. And at no point in time has anyone stepped up and said, hey, we have a problem. Or as happened in some cases as well, we've had people that have come to us with stuff. And then we say, okay, look, but we need actual witness statements. We need somebody who's going to say this has actually happened. And for a lot of times we get a third party who's talking for a third party who's saying they don't want to talk. It's too personal for them, this and that. And if it rises to the actual element of sexual assault, that is also a policing matter. So we get into this gray area where we can only do what information is given to us. There is only one time that we've actually escalated a situation where we've done actual reach out to another body, and that was because we had a chapter member that was in a personal crisis situation, and we did reach out to a local body to help protect that person in that moment. But that was a personal issue based on mental illness, and it was something that we legitimately asked for permission to do before we did. So we encourage, if you have people in your chapter, and if there is someone, especially if it's a person that's in a leadership position, we encourage you guys to step up and say, we have an issue with this person. This is the reason why. We do not want to give them the privilege of being in a position of power in any way, shape, or form. We can't do anything if we don't know about it, which is something that each individual chapter has to deal with internally.
Yeah, and
I wanted to add on to this. Sorry, just in the leadership question, and Mo, nice to meet you officially. I know, I think we've been on a couple of calls before, but I don't think on a Zoom call yet. And I think you have there was a situation where there was an allegation of inappropriate behavior of a chapter officer that happened before they became a chapter officer. And I definitely understand that being characterized as that person being protected by the community, and in some regards they were locally protected for a long time, or their reputation was locally protected for a long time before it ever got to the attention of the National Association. In response to that, in response to 2018, when it did become information that was actionable at a national level, because it sort of overcame that hurdle of being hearsay, and it became a formal request for support. We actually, in addition to updating our procedures on for the National Resolution Committee to make response faster, we were able to do that. We also added a phase of our elections process at the chapter level, that now we publish all the possible candidates. Anybody who's interested in being a candidate, they're published to the chapter first, and there's a 2-week feedback period where before the person's a candidate, they're a maybe candidate, and anybody in the community could anonymously say, hey, I have concerns about this person being a chapter director. And if that comes to us, even if it's anonymous, we're going to talk to the candidate and say, hey, just so you know, we got this information. Is this something that's likely to interfere with your leadership in this community? Is this something that you need to deal with right now? Is this something that's been brushed under the rug that's going to come forward if you take a highly visible position? And if it is, maybe now is not the time for you to be a candidate, and maybe now is the time for you to address this issue that's been brushed under the rug for many years. That hasn't happened a ton of times, but it has helped some candidates decide that maybe now isn't the time for them to step up into a leadership role in their community, and what they need to do is spend some time rebuilding trust with their community because of an issue that has happened in the past. That has happened, and great, and it's great, but that is a relatively new process, and I don't know how much people are aware of that process, because that solution is not as big and flashy as the issue was, right? But we have been doing that for a few years, and it has helped a lot of people sort of manage some conflict before it happens. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a big deal, and something we took a lot of effort, like legally, what can we do here? And this is actually built off of a process, oddly enough, it's built off of a process. There's a state that requires any couple that's getting married, they have to publish their intention to get married, and it has to be open for public comment. If anybody doesn't like that this couple is getting married, they
What
can
state
write
is
in and
state
challenge
is that?
the marriage. It's called the bans. It's called the bans. Yeah. And
Is it
and so
Utah?
this process is built off of that. Very weird. I know. But
Aaron, what
Wow.
state is that?
Illinois.
Illinois. Wow.
Wow.
Mhm.
It's
The
it-
more
it's
you
I
actually-
know.
used to do that when I got married, but it was 11 years ago. So
Yeah, that law is
Yeah.
probably that law. I haven't Googled it, but I'm guessing that law is still active in at least 40 states.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's also
But nobody enforces it.
it's
Not in
also
New York.
a back measure related to interracial marriage,
Yeah.
marriage across class, so that it gave people ample opportunity to be like, whoa, there's something problematic going here, which in itself is problematic. Cole, I see your hand. I want to say one thing because I get to, but also to Mo that I think is important is that even if sexual assaults are reported to the police, which we all know, or I hope we all know, that the vast majority are not even reported to the police. The police records are not given to USBG automatically, right? Like sometimes I think it's funny if we really think about it, like, do we really think the USBG is like on speed dial of like every organization in the universe? No, unless a problem happens, then we're like, how the hell do they not know about this? But the even if it was filed by the police, the USBG would have to know about it. And it would have to be USBG members at USBG events to then even begin to have a conversation about what does this mean for USBG. And another very cool thing, and the Fuck Shit Up Committee has done this, is last year we reviewed all the membership qualifications. So even people who have been found guilty of have a felony on their records, they are still eligible for membership, and or can also run for leadership positions, to what Aaron said. And then Cole, it's your turn. But if anything is known, or if you're going to run for a leadership position, you have the opportunity to say, is there anything we need to know about? And most of those things would not actually let someone not be able to run for leadership. And the cultural piece, Mo, that you mentioned, as cool as that is culturally, there is also shitty things that happen in the culture, right? That like, that's not the fact that a woman may feel ostracized and a man may feel elevated somehow. That's not specific to the USBG. That's just how sexism works, right? So then, so being able to have open conversations about what's happening also means that people have to be willingly interested in having those conversations. And sometimes you just don't know. Cole, and then back to Ingrid, I think.
That's fair. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. I think Ingrid and Aaron both spoke to this, but just to sort of reemphasize the point, I don't want to belabor it too much, is that we recognize organizationally that we're still dealing with the aftermath of that specific incident in 2018 that came to light in 2018 in one of the chapters, and I think it's important that like we recognize that we as an organization it brought a lot to light about what we could be doing better, and I think a lot of the work that's happened since then is doing better. So the resolutions committee process, the tools that we've gotten now to help sort of better vet local leaders. This committee, I think, or this body, not really in a committee, but this group is going to be reviewing a process for flagging members that have entered into the resolutions process and not met a resolution that was satisfactory to all of the people involved, that we'll be able to flag those members and that they would not be able to renew automatically. A lot of these tools were built up specifically because of how much was laid bare by the incident that I think people are probably still referring to. Mo, I think the people that you're talking to that felt that the organization had not responded in the way that they would have hoped to those valid concerns. We heard that as an organization, and we've changed a lot of the whole organizational structure of the Guild has changed over the last 5 or 6 years, and in no small part because of that single precipitating incident. So we heard it. We're never going to be able to resolve all of these issues satisfactorily for all parties, in part because of what Ingrid mentioned. Like, people want us to police things that happen outside of USBG spaces, or police things that happen between a member and a non-member and another non-member. And we're not that body, and we can't be that body. And people get frustrated by that. And occasionally, even through no fault, there's a technical error that leads to somebody having the communication does not live up to the new standards that we've set for ourselves. Those things happen, and people are right to be upset about those things. But by and large, we have changed so much about our organization, specifically in a response to these issues. And I think it warrants people who were frustrated with how and I was one of those people who was frustrated with how the organization handled that. It's one of the reasons I entered the national leadership. But I think the work that's been done since then speaks volumes about how the organization cares about those, takes it seriously, and has worked to become a stronger organization as a result.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So for today, the topic of fuck shit up is 1, this thing exists. 2, welcome Ingrid. And 2, 3, there is a topic that's being discussed inside of the leadership of this organization in reference to, these are my words, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Ingrid and mute again because they're drilling under the house, which is great with 3 dogs. But the topic that's being discussed in my outsider understanding is how hard it is for a member to be flagged. And then what does flag mean? And then if one is flagged, how does one become unflagged? Or potentially, how does one remain flagged? So that is the conversation that's being had in that committee. We invited to that conversation to come part of whoever showed up for Fuck Shit Up this month. Y'all, thank you. And that is to be discussed. Those are the kind of 4 agenda items for the day of the discussion. We don't have necessarily a second topic other than I'm going to have a doodle coming out, so I'm warning all of you that it's coming. Thank you, Mo, for laughing at me for my stupid doodles. Okay, Ingrid, take it away in whatever order you like, and or go for it.
Okay, so it's actually good that Cole's on this call because he is our wordsmith on the NRC. I am very good at coming up with resolutions. I am not very good at putting that into writing. As many of you are aware, they don't let me write my own letters for a reason. But that being said, we did find it very important. Some things that most people don't know, and actually kind of not necessarily a good thing, is that we've had a flagged membership list for quite some time. What that actually constituted was people who had gone through the resolution process and did not fulfill their obligation, or people that went through the resolution process and we saw as not someone that we wanted to be a member. And then some people prior who, may have embezzled funds from a chapter or done something that put that chapter at risk. But we've had these members. And as of today, only one person on that list has attempted to rejoin the USBG, but never actually followed through on the steps that were required to do so. The way that we look at it is sometimes people have really big egos, or maybe very narcissistic, or really like the power of trying to win. And that's what happens when they try. But some people don't know that they're even on this list. A lot of the times this resolves itself in that they don't renew their membership and they don't look to renew their membership. So that kind of keeps them on that flagged list. However, should they want to rejoin, we wanted to make sure that we had a process in place that we can say, hey, we just wanted to let you know that you're on this list and there's some extra steps that you have to take to make sure that we're maintaining the security and the safety of our membership. That's the background of where this came from. So to be assigned, this is a document that the NRC has put forth as a draft. We did present it to the board at our last meeting last week. We are now presenting it to you guys to tear it apart and do whatever you need for it. I can share my screen, or I can just kind of read it to you guys. Either which way, this will then be brought to the NRC, who meets immediately after this call. So we will, and you have a couple of us on the call, which is very helpful. Our committee is extraordinarily functional, and we like to address things as quickly as possible. So everything that comes out of this, as long as we can talk about it without any privacy concerns, we will definitely share it with the NRC committee. So first and foremost, this couldn't be created until we actually had a code of conduct. It was very difficult for us to do anything until we had something that they could violate. So thank you so much for the work prior to this one. I mean, obviously, whatever our committee was called before, and you guys have actually given us very viable purposes. So we have a code of conduct, we have a sexual harassment policy. The way to always think about this is you can't take away something from someone unless you have the reason to do that. So both the code of conduct and the sexual assault policy, sexual harassment policy have given us those tools to say, okay, well, you're in violation of X, Y, and Z. Now we can go down this path that we have to go. So first and foremost, the member must have been formally accused of a violation of the code of conduct or policy against harassment. Anytime somebody renews their membership in the USBG, they check that box that says that they agree to these terms. They may not read that box, but they definitely agree. Yeah?
I'm interrupting. Are you trying to share your screen right now?
No.
Okay.
If
JK,
people want me to, I will.
you are successfully not doing it. Good job.
Yeah. Oh, I would say
Probably
it would
easier
probably be
for me
better.
to read it than share it. Yeah.
Oh,
Do you want me to
I
share
would
it, Monique?
yeah, I would prefer to see it like visually.
Okay, let's
Sorry,
see.
that person.
Share my, where is this thing? There it is. Share. All right, you guys, oh, I don't want you to see my whole screen. Hold on. No reason for you guys to know my desktop. Okay, can you guys see it? Nod. Good, cool. So here's the policy that we have. So first and foremost, everyone who signs up to be a USBG member, even upon renewal, is now required to check off the box that they agree to the code of conduct and the sexual harassment policy. They never read it. Most people don't read the terms and conditions of anything, but it does provide us with that output to say, well, you agreed to these terms. Furthermore, what we're going to be asking from chapters is that they share this in the meeting, like I explained earlier, so that everyone's really clear on the expectations that we have as a member of the USBG. So once a formal complaint has come through, the matter must have been reviewed and investigated by the NRC through the conflict resolution process. And that's the process that we spoke about. It goes from complaint to investigation to dealing with all the parties and then a resolution at the tail end. The NRC must determine by a majority vote that that person is to be flagged. Now, what can cause a flag would be we gave them a resolution and they didn't follow through on it. That documents that are needed are still outstanding, that monies were embezzled, haven't been paid. There's different avenues of that can actually say that this person did not complete what was required of them to become a member again. So that would be up to the NRC to say, okay, this person is flagged until future notice. And then after that, the NRC must inform the primary person, which is people involved in it, the member with the flagman and the executive director. So that of course would be Aaron. And that's also to make sure that everybody is now aware of everything that is going on. Right now, we kind of skip that last step. Right now, there are people out there that don't realize that they're flagged, but they're not currently members. So we can't really tell them now that they're a flagged member. Any questions on this so far? Go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, not that specifically. Say there is a member that is flagged and they've made other members uncomfortable, and then you decide to unflag or they're going to repent, and then they're back in a meeting, but the members that they made uncomfortable are still there, and they're like, well, we don't want this person around because we're all so uncomfortable.
So anytime what we're looking at for this, and we'll go through this in the process, when a flagged member attempts to become a member again, it technically reopens the case that they were in. It's not like double jeopardy or anything like that, but we want to make sure that we review and that the community is safe as well. So that would then go back to us reinvestigating and seeing where it is and seeing if they fulfilled their resolution obligations. A lot of the times the resolution obligations are like Aaron brought up earlier, is to rebuild trust within their own community. Not all of our cases are going to be related to like assault or safety. Sometimes it's simple. It's they didn't do what they were supposed to do as a treasurer, or they didn't do what they were supposed to do as a president. So not all of them are as clear, but some of them are really clear.
Okay, thank you.
And this goes to part of your point. On occasion, a flagged member may meet predetermined requirements to renew based on the recommendations of the NRC, in which case the flagged member status will be removed and the member notified of reinstatement. That would go back to, let's say, and this happens pretty frequently, a chapter leader leaves and takes the checkbook and the debit card and doesn't give access to the Google Drive. we could flag them until they fulfilled the obligation of releasing that data to the new members. Then they would be eligible to renew right away without it. So going back, like going all the way down to the simplest and then all the way up to the biggest.
And if there's an issue with a member, say somebody comes to me or somebody else on the board and says, I'm not comfortable, is it preferable that a few people talk to them, or the way that it gets communicated, you know, in person, through an email? I mean, you know, if you just do one-on-one, I mean, I would think it should be at least 2 people talking to that person or
The
communicating
flagged
with
member or the individual?
or individual, either or. Like
So-
if there's an individual, you know.
If there's an individual that has a complaint about someone that was flagged, it would be my recommendation for them to bring it to the NRC in the first place, because
Okay.
as a whole, and this is something that can be talked about, the general membership does not know when an individual is flagged, because technically that person isn't part of the USBG in that moment. They're not going to show up in the USBG membership reports. There is no way for us to have people who aren't part of our organization be known as people that are flagged. But what we can say is when someone is flagged, the case against them would then be reopened, and the people would be, we would reach out to, if it was a chapter, we would reach out to the chapter, we would reach out to the other people that were in that case.
Thank you.
Cole, am I on the right path with this?
Yeah, I just know because it could happen, because so basically, you know, things happen with our membership. I know the main thing is they're not going to be back in, but just, you know, in general, you know, people sometimes forget or aren't aware, you know, they're new and they don't know, you know, they think oh, let me go have drinks and party.
Paula, because of some of the conversations we've had too, I just want to re-emphasize that to be flagged means like super egregious material or evidence or experiences have occurred. Like, so very few people are ever flagged. So that doesn't mean like the bad person in a claim, like that's usually handled within code of conduct, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's not flagged. Flagged is like they're in some special hell no category.
Purgatory.
Purgatory, yeah.
Right. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't go there. So then back to Ingrid.
And just a reminder, this is someone that's already been put through the resolution process. So we have all back information. One of the things that we were talking about at the NRC level is, for instance, someone who was flagged in 2018, the NRC committee may be a completely new face of people that weren't aware of what happened back then. So we wanted to give them the ability to reopen the case and reevaluate all of the information that was given to them then and all the information that's given to them now. Aaron, I know you were saying something.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, you know, every USBG event is covered by the policy against harassment. So somebody's conduct at a USBG event is qualifying, like they're being you know, any of the things that are in that policy, like you know, harassing anybody, which is unwanted verbal or physical conduct related to any sort of, you know, identity. If that is happening at an event, the person in charge of that event, whoever it is, should be told, and that person can be asked to leave. Like no questions asked. Like if that's, you know, again, that's if that's what the person being harassed wants, right? We always want to be mindful of the person who is being harassed, who is actively being harassed, to be able to assert their desires in that position, in that space, right? If they want the person removed, the person can be removed if harassment is taking place. The possibility of harassment taking place because of past conduct or conduct in outside areas is a little bit more difficult to, for the organization to be able to make a case that that person must be removed or should be prohibited from entering a space, right? It's a tricky area. Somebody's presence, unless they are actively harassing somebody, then our policy doesn't really, can't really do much, and we don't actually have the authority to control somebody's movements in that way. Which is why it helps, really helps to have members only events, or to have very, very limited guest list that you have control over. Like, we're gonna let X number of guests in, and you have to register with us, and we need to be able to check, to know who you are, and be able to follow up with you if something happens, right? To be able to say, like, hey, you're not invited to our events anymore because of your behavior at the last one. But if you don't have a registration list, how are we going to even know that person was there if we need to go back
Right.
and figure it out? So that's where Jess was talking about, the more exclusive you are, the more intentionally and inclusively exclusive you are, the better as an organization, because you have more authority to control people's access. If everything is open, everything is public, and we're just like, everybody come on in, it is a recipe for not being able to keep people safe inside our spaces,
I agree.
All right, awesome. Well, y'all have a great one. I'm gonna jump into another meeting, and it's great having this dialogue and this conversation with y'all is wonderful. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Aaron.
Take care.
Bye.
So going back to what we were talking about, so now the process is relatively simple. All flagged members must meet with the NRC prior to renewing. So if they attempt to renew, the staff will let us know that someone attempted to renew. Staff will then say this, we need to reach out to this person and say, hey, there's been something added, you've been flagged, we need to talk to you before we can approve this. It's just an extra step for safety. And then we want to make sure that they've met any criteria. So for instance, going back to my example of returning the debit card or making sure that the Google Drive has been transferred over. And by the majority of the vote of NRC, and that gives us the ability to reopen that case, reevaluate it, reinvestigate it if necessary to see whether it's in the right interest of our members to allow that person. And then from that point in on, we will then notify the executive director that this person has been approved or not approved. And that will then allow them to either register or not register. The not registering part of it is where we haven't gotten there. There may be someone who kicks back with it, but as an organization, we have the right to determine who our members are. And if this person does not fulfill the requirements of being a USPG member, then we simply keep them out of the organization instead of allowing them back in. So now it's on you guys.
I'm just gonna guess that there may need to be some like stimulation-y kind of ideas. So if let's take a hypothetical flagged person, they were flagged for financial purposes, because that's probably far more common than any other flagging reason. So the checkbook disappeared. Who knows if they stole money? Who knows if they didn't? But they didn't respond to anything. They didn't give anything back. Monetarily, question marks, the person gets flagged. They've gone through the process. They have now been flagged. Time has passed. And this person, Sally, is now interested in getting back involved at the chapter level or the national level of USPG and sends in the online application to pay their dues. And the staff have received it, and the staff cross-reference it and see, like, oh, this person has been flagged. The discussion that is currently underway that y'all get to fuck shit up is, what do people need to be thinking about as to a currently flagged person becoming unflagged enough, whatever that means, that's subjective, but unflagged enough to be able to become a member? And is there a pink flag versus a red flag of, while the flagged person is now a member, getting out of flag zone? What, you dream up anything you want to. This is the fuck shit up opportunity of, how does one become unflagged? How does a flagged person become a member again? And what happens if they are given the opportunity to become a member? How do you determine if that is or isn't the case? And if they do become a member, what should maybe be thought about or happen? How's that, Ingrid? Did I nail the word cloud?
Good word, Clem. Stop my video for a second because my cat's stuck somewhere.
Oh yeah, no worries. So the first assumption, just to be clear, is that it's very hard to become flagged. In order to become flagged, you have exhausted all possible attempts of everything of not being flagged, whatever those are. So now this person is flagged and is knocking again on the USPG door. What needs to be thought about? What ideas do you have? What ideas do you have of, like, still a hell no? How does a hell no become a no versus a yes versus a hell yes? Paula, are you itching? Go for it.
Yeah, well, sorry. My concern would be, okay, this person says they want to become unflagged, whatever. Say we do they're allowed back in, but then so many other members of the chapter were like, hey, this person did blah, 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 blah. We're not very comfortable with them being back in. It's because that would be a majority compared to whatever. Then I'd be more concerned about, do we allow this person to stand up and say, I made a mistake, I'm really interested in coming back in, or handle it more privately? Afterwards.
So from an NRC perspective, if this was someone that had a chapter related issue or affected a chapter as whole, we would reach out to the chapter membership, the chapter leadership at that time to say, hey, this guy's, based on the criteria of the investigation, this guy's coming back. We would ask what their resolution would be. So there could be an outcome from this where we say, okay, look, your body is very uncomfortable with you coming back in. These are your guidelines to be reaccepted and unflagged. So we could put that in as a secondary resolution to the first resolution. In some cases, and I understand the New York issue pretty large. I was part of that whole thing back then, which is why I'm now running NRC. In that case, and in all fairness, it's a case that's specific to your chapter.
Right.
That person would not be eligible for renewal. And that's sense. Only because of other issues, legal issues that were outside of the context of that. So if that person did apply, there are too many people within the still context of the USPG that would deny that application.
That makes sense.
I know where you were going and I see it, but there are some other issues in other chapters that rise to an occasion. And we have been in contact with some of the leaders, both of that time, and if it was to renew, we would be in contact with the new leaders as well. But we have to maintain privacy. So we have to make sure that the information that we're transferring has to be information that we can, and we have to also maintain disclosure at that point in time. We don't want to out a victim. Correct. If that is the case. Yeah.
So Ingrid, is that always part of the deliberation at the end of an NRC resolution, is to go to the chapter leaders? This is in the case of someone trying to renew, or is it case by case? It's not like always we're going to go to the chapter leadership.
Never actually had to do it yet.
Okay.
It would be case by case. It would be based on whatever the resolution was. In some cases, like we've had some cases where the resolution has been, for instance, that something happened and a leader has been asked to step down. If that leader had not fulfilled that obligation, then that would put them flagged. We haven't actually had that. Most people are relatively reasonable when they find out that what the resolution and the finality is. The flagged members that are currently sitting on this list have done very, very extreme things. For instance, like going back to the simpler ones, which sounds not simple, like embezzling. Those people have been put on the list for obviously failure for fiduciary responsibility. We have some people that have had some sexual assault allegations that has been put on the list. And then some have been internal strifes that have caused dysfunction within the chapter, all of which have been very egregious, all of which have been very large. And the resolutions, in order for them to get back, are pretty much unsurmountable for them to rejoin. However, if they were willing and wanting to go through the steps to rejoin, then there would be resolution for them that they would have to do within their own space if it involved that. I mean, it could also just be person to person.
And this is just for members to become a member again, not like, is leadership a different tier of, like when we were bringing up the pink flag versus the red? Right.
Can't be a leader without a member.
No, let's say they come in and they have gone through the steps to become a member. Are they then able to become a leader, chapter leader, or NRC or NCC or board?
So that would go into the process of becoming a chapter leader, which Aaron spoke to. Once we cannot exclude people from rolling into leadership. Once they are a leader, we can take it away from them, but we can't stop them from asking to be a leader. What would happen is that if they did ask to be a leader, then it would roll to the NOMCOM committee. NOMCOM committee would be like, all right, yes or no, this is not. And as he said, he discloses that to the chapter. So if chapters have any hesitance to bring somebody else in, then the chapter can police that. Well, that wrong word, can actually review that within the context of their own culture. We at the national level don't understand the culture within every chapter. So we want to be able to give you guys the tool and the strength to do that. Again, this is dealing with like less than 1% of our membership, but still something that we wanted to make sure was a clear process so that if someone does get flagged or someone starts coming out, we know how to answer those questions.
Perfect.
It really is the coolest thing to be having really hard conversations before you need to have them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ugh.
Our role as the NRC is really to mitigate situations. Obviously, one of the things that we want to do is keep as many members as possible. We want to find a resolution that would be satisfactory to both partners so that we don't lose a member, but we may have to change the way that they handle themselves within the context of our organization. However, there are times, and these are the times that this person has to, like, does not fit, does not make the security or the safety that we're looking for, does not fit who we see as a USPG member. Again, going back to that code of conduct that you guys fucked shit up about, without that, we could not be what we are. And that's also why we want to review that document as often as possible to make sure that it stays current as well.
You know, I just want to say, having been brought into this specifically by Ingrid, that so much of the structure that's been added in the last few years actually really is what allows the organization to be able to continue to grow. We didn't have these processes in place before. We didn't have these conversations in place before. And I have been vocal about my reluctance around the USPG, and I'm glad personally to see that these pathways are taken and these routes were established, because I take it for granted that there's a whole new generation of baby bartenders out there. There's a whole new generation of children that are now bartending, who will have the opportunity to form lasting relationships and find job opportunities through the organization. And the stronger the organization is, and the more we know what it is we do, the better we can do it. So, fuck yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. One of my goals when I became a board member at the in the USPG was specifically to deal with governance and structure. As a person that worked in construction her whole life, it's very important to realize that that's a safety mechanism as opposed to a control mechanism. Having structure gives you the ability to create fail safes. It gives you the ability to check out the actual capacity of everything. The looser everybody always thinks, and Jess spoke to this, everyone always thinks that you should be open and do everything. But the problem with that, the gray areas get too gray, and it's too easy for someone to think they're right when there's nothing that says that they're wrong. And in this case, all the structure that's been done over the last 6 years has really helped us both at the NRC level, the board level, the chapter level, and now the NCC level, to go back to them and say, well, as a person in this organization, this is the guidelines, this is what we have, this is what we expect from you. So yeah, I agree.
It's really counterintuitive, but the most effective beginning of building and informing an inclusive culture is, who are you actively excluding? Right? So like, who is not allowed in these spaces? And so potentially even having the opportunity of flagging someone is protecting everyone else who could come. Right? So I know we use the word discrimination and we're like, oh, that's terrible. But like, an association actually gets to discriminate based on their culture of who gets to come in. Now, it can go AWOL, and I don't recommend that. So not going AWOL, plus you have like laws that you're supposed to follow. But the more specific you can get about what is acceptable within that culture, the better. And what ends up happening is a lot of associations spend a lot of time trying to broaden what means acceptable without actually holding themselves accountable to what isn't, and what has been tolerated but is no longer acceptable. So that's a really important thing to remember. Then once you've decided what is excluded intentionally, then you get to the hard work of what's excluded unintentionally, which is how you also get to sexism and racism and ageism, and which bartender and you sling beer versus make cocktails or whatever. Like, that's the kind of unconscious excluded work that is also being done. So it's not an ordered thing. So then once you know who's being excluded intentionally and unexcluded, now what are you going to actively do if that corrects itself? Right? So if we start, if USBG opens up to many more kind of members and avatars and identities and lived experiences, then how is that going to be supported in the culture? That's some of the bridge work that's happening. And then the absolutely hell no red flagged people, having the ability for them to come back. What does that process look like? What questions need to be happened? We're doing this work, which is great.
One of the things to look at also is that we as an organization speak very highly of being inclusive, welcoming, empathetic, sympathetic, and forgiving. So by putting this process into place and formalizing it, we've actually now enhanced that we've actually said, hey, you know what, people fuck up sometimes. Some of them are egregious and they'll never come back. But at the same time, some of them are, maybe they were just 21-year-old drunk kids. And we can say, have you learned? This is what we need from that. We're going to give you the ability to rejoin and become and belong part of this membership again. But this is what you have to do to make that. And a lot of it shows responsibility. As of sitting right now, there's only about 7 people on this list. Of that, it started in 2018. There's a couple of people on there that, like I said, were just embezzlement. Nobody has asked to come back and has fulfilled all the requirements of it. But we wanted to be aware that in case someone did, how do we handle that? How do we do this? What are the steps? I can't guarantee that that person is going to be able to talk to the chapter. As I said, there's privacy concerns around some of this, and we don't want to out a victim, or we don't want to actually disclose any type of personal information. But at times that might come to it. And it's really kind of bringing the entire chapter leadership and board leadership on board with what we're doing.
So does everyone know Calvin and Hobbes?
Yes.
There's a great Calvin and Hobbes cartoon that I'll never forget, where he's in the car with his dad and they drive over a bridge and there's a sign that says weight limit 10 tons. And Calvin says to his dad, how do they know how heavy a truck they can drive over the bridge? And his dad says, that's easy. They drive heavier and heavier trucks over the bridge until the bridge collapses. And then they weigh the last truck, which is exactly how these organizations run. Like, sometimes you got to wait for a bridge to collapse and go, oh, we need to restructure this. It's not what we thought was going to be at the beginning. Whoops, we will reinforce the bridge for next time.
There was a great meme to that yesterday, actually. It was an article how somebody went into a coma for eating 413 chicken McNuggets. And the quote underneath went, well, good, now we know it's 412, but also, why did we ever have to know that? But it's the same theory, like, okay, now you know the limit. Now you don't die at 412, but 413 will put you in a coma.
Also, why? Who does that?
Oh, that's just, he was gonna die anyway. That stomach, oof.
Since I have lunch coming up, so it's good to know.
412. Also, how expensive was that?
So not worth. It was not worth rupturing your insides, I'd say.
No. Are you guys comfortable with the flag process? Is there any other questions that I can help with that specific process, or any questions on the NRC? We would like people to use it more as opposed to less. We don't mind if we have, like, as soon as I get off this call, I'm jumping on the NRC. We have a couple of cases that we need to talk about. We will keep them open until we get a resolution. There is one case right now that is on year 2, but we touch base on it periodically with the team that is involved in it. Mind you, this is a chapter issue as opposed to any type of individual to individual issue. And we just keep trying to find a time to get that to resolution. Once we get that and we have those conversations, we'll close it and then create anything new from there. So we do not stop until it reaches the actual resolution that's satisfactory to the parties involved.
As I say, and when it comes to getting reinstatement, is there like any type of classes or things that they take, like workshops that you guys provide for them specifically?
No, that borders on, so that's kind of an ask that would then border on creating punitive damages. And that's something that we want to kind of stay away from. We may request of them to do something outside of the USPG that's not created by the USPG, but we won't have something internally that they have to do. Also, just creating that is something that's going to require a lot of work that our management staff doesn't have the training to do. We haven't come across that. It might be something that, for instance, and this is completely hypothetical, maybe there was somebody who is known for sexual harassment in the chapter. The chapter has asked us to tell them that they would like them to do some sort of training or do some sort of public apology. We can put that forth as a resolution to that person to rejoin and give them to say, okay, here are the guidelines for you to rejoin based on your chapter needs. They will either say yes or no. Ironically, we find that more people are like, it's not worth the effort than it is to rejoin. Like at the end of it, we're one organization dealing within hospitality. If it's too much of a stretch for someone, if it's too difficult for someone to have entry based on needs of the chapter, then they don't need to be a member. We only want the best people as part of the USPG. Hi, Reza.
Hello, happy to be here.
I like that logo. Cool. And if you guys ever have any questions, so our meetings are closed for obvious reasons, but if at any point in time you guys wanted to say something to the NRC as a whole, we will allocate time on our agenda to have people that are not privy to the information speak. So it's normally at the beginning, our meetings are at 4 o'clock. You guys are welcome to come in. We'll put some time aside that is public forum time, and then we'll ask you to leave so we can go back into privacy time.
Excellent. Just in case, I usually go around and just make sure that folks know that they can say something. So I'm just going to kind of whip around and see. So the current question, David, you're about to leave. Do you have any thoughts or comments you want to say out loud? You put something in the chat.
Do you want me to read the chat?
Oh, it's fantastic to hear this work being put on. Absolutely agree that the right questions need to be asked before letting someone back in. High five, David. Okay, great.
David.
Ingrid, do you want to go to the next piece of like what kind of questions to ask, or is your ask for the fuck shit up just to know this exists?
My ask is for you guys to tell us what you think, what your expectations of us are. Every case is completely different. So there isn't something that is just a set in stone. This is what we want to do. It's one of the reasons why we have, like, heart, head, and what's the last one?
Action.
I'm completely head. But either which way, we have us all together so that we can look at it from different viewpoints. We also like to make sure that it's people that have been a member, people have been a chapter leader, people who was on the board of directors. So we're also looking at it from 3 different governance levels as well. When we want as much experience as possible, but we still want to keep that group as small as possible because privacy, we can't just willy-nilly have people on the committee that we don't trust. This is one committee that requires a very, very high level of trust, both from each other and from our members as well. But whatever if you guys have questions, if you guys want to speak to the NRC, let me know and I'll get you on our next agenda. If there's an issue that's in your chapter, we encourage you to bring that forward to us. If there's a chapter issue that maybe the guidelines and the code of conduct or even our own chapter guidelines aren't clear to you, just bring it to us. We're one of those organizations that can vet that information for you.
Great. So before you go, I'm just going to whip around and see if anybody has any thoughts or comments specific about anything related to NCR then. So Jackie, how about I start with you, and Paula, you're on deck. Jackie, any thoughts, comments, ideas, anything for Ingrid to take back to the group?
The purpose of the fuck shit up committee is to not have to fuck shit up anymore.
It's very true. Wouldn't it be great? And I would actually posit that that's actually one of the goals of this group too, is that it shouldn't be needed anymore. Working towards our unemployment means that we're all behaving.
I would rather my Tuesdays at 4 o'clock come back.
Right. And until then, see you next month. Okay, Paula, you're next, and then Mo, you're on deck.
I just think it's great that there is, if I'm going to hope there won't be any issues, but if there is an issue, that there's somewhere to go for guidance, which, you know, it's self-assuring. And thank you for what you're doing.
Excellent. Mo, thoughts, comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
As a newbie, this is great. I think this was a productive conversation, and it brought some more insight to me in how things are operated and how things probably can be communicated on a local level. And I think probably on a local level, not everybody are familiar with their rights in the law. So maybe a workshop or, you know, putting like an update or a blast out might be something that needs to be incorporated. And that's all I got to say.
Well, we're so happy to have you. I hope you had a great vacation and we're
I
well
did.
rested.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I did. Thank
Rubbing
you.
it in. Okay, great. Welcome back. Raul and then Reza will go to you. Raul, do you have any thoughts or comments, or as kind of the national board member, although Ingrid is also on the national board, do you have any thoughts or comments kind of how those two things are going together? Anything that we know about?
I think it's just really important what Jackie brought up, that we did not have these processes when I joined, you know, in 2010, you know, so if you had a problem, it was, you know, suck it up and see you later. So at least now there's a vehicle, if something makes you uncomfortable, that there's actually a process, and it's not, you know, us being the police of the bar industry. You know, it's just responding to the needs of the members. We have a process now and it's clear. So I do love that we have that.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank y'all to y'all. I don't do shit with it. Just thank you for commenting. Reza, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Having missed the first 80 minutes of this call, I'm not exactly sure what was discussed, but I'm pretty familiar with this committee.
In the first 80 minutes, you volunteered to do a lot of things.
Okay, I was voluntold. I can tell you that during the first iteration of what used to be called the Conflict Resolution Committee, I was actually, by geographic designation, having been the regional vice president at the time of a couple chapter issues, I was actually the chair of this committee in its first time around. And I'm glad to see the direction that it's taken with more professionals involved with conflict resolution than just my attempt at being a good human being. I got to say that I'm very proud that every scenario that or every case, if you want to call it, that we presided over during those first 2 years actually resolved with both parties, or the person that brought it to the table, the issue to the table, actually signed off and said, I appreciate the process that we went through, and I'm comfortable with where we're at today, to the point where they resumed participating in the chapter and the organization as a whole. Having it be confidential and no longer being on that committee, I don't know what resolutions have been implemented thus far or what the response has been. Generally speaking, although I have a lot to say, I want to be part of the Fuck Shit Up committee and shut the fuck up and let other people who are either more qualified or have more unique, distinct opinions on stuff, and only weigh in and offer perspective based on having been a member since 2003, not to be the one leading and guiding and directing the conversations, just to fill up space.
That is awesome, and I think the Shut the Fuck Up committee will be formed probably in a couple more iterations of governance models. We'll get to Shut the Fuck Up, but we're not there yet, so we are still at Fuck the Shit Up for sure. Awesome. Ingrid, any last thoughts or comments for Fuck Shit Up? Thank you very much for kind of letting everybody know that this committee even exists, what it does, how it works, what it works on the chapter level, and the having tough conversations before you need them should never, ever, ever go unnoticed. That's really important, and Bowie looks amazing.
So I would like to say on behalf of the committee and myself, thank you for trusting us with this information and for trusting us to do this process. It requires our members know and actually invest in what we're doing. So please get the word out that we're here to help. I know that it's very stressful to be a chapter leader and sometimes as a member. And if there's anything that we can do to help mitigate that and actually make it more clear, that's what we're here for. Let us do the heavy lifting so that you guys don't have to do it within your own chapters. We hold this committee in very high regard. So every year that we look at the members that are part of it, we make sure that they're members with trusted voices amongst our community. We are part of your community. So again, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Raul gets a gold star because he did the doodle for summer first. So congratulations. Yay for multitaskers. The doodle link is gone out through Doodle and is in the chat. June, July, and August. We collectively said Tuesdays, 11 to 1 Pacific, so whatever that translates to wherever you are, was good-ish for the most people. So these are only Tuesdays and only 11 to 1 Pacific times. I will fully admit June is fucking bonkers, so there is a very good chance we will not meet in June. But just in case, if any of the June dates work, I will be moving at least 2 flights in order to be on the Fuck Shit Up committee. But that's what I do, people. Also, is the link in the chat of the meeting efficacy survey. I would like for you to know that y'all are generally doing a terrible job at filling out this survey after the meeting. But to become an officially recognized group thing, we're supposed to do what all the other committees and task force do, which is, how'd that go? How could it be better? Which also leads to future people feeling responsible for how this meeting goes. Because someday, not only will this group not exist, but before then, I will not have to facilitate it because y'all will be doing it yourselves. So please do the meeting link. I will take the recording. I'll put it on YouTube. I'll send an email to everyone that no one will read that will have the link to the recording, the link to the meeting survey, and the doodle link as well. But hopefully we will meet June and July and August. Jackie, you look like you want to say something.
I have to head out. I've got a 3:30.
Okay, Smoocher and
Good
Roosters,
meeting,
bye.
y'all. Bye. Bowie says bye.
Bye.
Oh, bye.
That is Fuck Shit Up for May. So thank you very much for
Yes.
coming. And hopefully I will see y'all in June, definitely in July. And Ingrid, keep us posted if there's anything the Fuck Shit Up group can possibly do.
Definitely.
Joe Beth isn't here, but thank you to Joe Beth for always being backup texting duty. That seems to be working quite effectively. And I think that's it. So thanks, y'all.
Guys,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Bye.
it.
Bye.
Here's 30
Hi,
minutes
everyone.
of back. You're
Thank you.
welcome. Don't say I never gave you nothing.